Hi, my name is Joseph Lazarus, and I'm excited to bring to you the findings from E2 Brute's Budweiser craft beer case study. So today we're going to look at existing craft brewery locations, types of craft beers, and a summary of alcohol by volume and bitterness content. And then we'll look at a market analysis to see if there's new opportunities for Budweiser to tap into the craft brew market. So the existing craft brewery locations. Despite having the largest population, California came in second to Colorado, who had the most breweries at 47. Interesting to note that the top 5 states account for a plurality of breweries at 31%. The data set that we had a lot of different types of beers in it, and we use those characteristics of beers in order to classify them into subclasses, and this enabled us to better address some of the missing values we found in our data set. So 42% of the beers were missing bitterness information, and only 2.6 were missing alcohol information. So we used the classes of beers that we came up with in the previous slide, and we were able to impute the mean for those classes in order to give us a higher or a better representation of what the bitterness content would be for that particular type of beer based on its class. The bitterness and alcohol by volume by state. For the most part, the data was pretty consistent across each state, and the outliers can be explained in a couple different ways. So for the alcohol by volume, Utah has a state law prohibiting alcohol content from being over 4%. And in Delaware and West Virginia, we had very low sample sizes, and it's feasible to assume that if we had more samples, that their median bitterness content would be closer to the rest of the states. Looking at the maxes for each one of these categories, Upslope Brewing Company in Colorado, Lee Hill Series topped out the list with 12.8% alcohol by volume, and the most bitter beer was the aptly named Bitter Bitch out of Astoria Brewing Company, Oregon. A summary of the alcohol by volume distribution. For the most part, this distribution appears to be normal, has a mean of 0.0598, and it looks to be a little bit right skewed, mostly due to ales and IPAs, which tend to have a little more alcohol by volume. So then we looked at bitterness and alcohol by volume to see if there's a relationship between the two. And indeed, we did find a relationship that the more bitter a beer, the more alcohol content was in that beer. And we could explain this relationship that 45% of the variation is explained in the alcohol by content by the bitterness. And then we did some supervised machine learning using K nearest neighbors. The machine learning algorithm, a little bit on how it works, it assumes that that things that exist in close proximity are similar to each other. In other words, on a Cartesian plane, 2 points that are closely graphed are going to be similar to one another, and that value and how many neighbors it looks at is the K value. So we ran 500 different iterations assigning different K values to our training test set, and found that the optimal K value for looking at its neighbors was 1, though we found good results from 1 through 5. Our model that we ended up using with K equals 1 had a 95% accuracy, so we were pretty happy with the accuracy rating we found using our machine learning model. So after we finished looking at the required information, or the requested information, we were motivated to see if we could find a market insights for Budweiser, to find some growth opportunities within the market. So we explored the Budweiser website, and we noticed 2 interesting things. 1, that Budweiser partners with craft brewery subsidiaries, and 2, Budweiser has brewery experiential sites throughout the United States. These craft brewery experiential sites are noted in blue dots on this map. Then we took data from the National Institute of Health and got a per capita summary of consumption of alcohol for the number of people in that state, and then we divided that by the number of breweries in that state, and we ended up with this index, which might show some states that are underrepresented for the number of breweries they have based on how much they drink per capita. Then we looked at a total consumption using the per capita results and multiplying that by a 2019 U.S. Census information. Interesting to note that Nevada scored high in both these categories, and North and South Dakota were high in the per capita index. So our conclusion based on this information was that some states warrant further investigation in order to expand Budweiser's share into the craft brewery market. States like North and South Dakota consume a lot of alcohol but have very few brewery sites. Perhaps Budweiser's subsidiaries could find some market potential there. And Nevada has both a high state population, high consumption of alcohol, and is a tourist destination and could potentially represent a location for a new Budweiser brewery experiential site. But our analysis was based on a few assumptions that per capita alcohol consumption could approximate a taste preference for beer. We also assumed that our data is complete and that Budweiser is in fact looking to expand into the craft brewery market. Our recommendations for Budweiser is to provide E2 Brute with refined sales data. We could use that data to conduct a more precise market analysis, and we could also include a taste preference for beer with respect to bitterness and alcohol by volume with respect to state. So today we covered an exploration into the craft brewery market. We reviewed trends in the beer industry and provided insights for growth. I hope you enjoyed our presentation today, and thank you for your time.